France has the world's sixth largest economy by nominal figures and the ninth largest economy by PPP figures. It has the third largest economy in Europe, with Germany and the UK in first and second. The OECD is headquartered in Paris, the nation's financial capital. In terms of aggregate wealth, the French are the wealthiest Europeans, accounting for more than a quarter of wealthiest European households. Globally, the French nation ranks fourth wealthiest. The chemical industry is a key sector for France, helping to develop other manufacturing activities and contributing to economic growth. France's tourism industry is a major component of the economy, as France is the most visited destination in the world. Sophia Antipolis is the major technology hub for the economy of France. According to the IMF, in 2013, France was the world's 20th country by GDP per capita, with $44,099 per inhabitant. In 2013, France was listed on the United Nations' Human Development Index with 0.884 and 25th on the Corruption Perceptions Index. France's economy entered the recession of the late 2000s later and appeared to leave it earlier than most affected economies, only enduring 4 quarters of contraction. However, France experienced stagnant growth between 2012 and 2014, with the economy expanding by 0% in 2012, 0.8% in 2013 and 0.2% in 2014. The growth picked up in 2015 with a growth of 1.2% and a forecasted growth of 1.5% for 2016, and 1.7% for 2017, the highest since 2011. Corporations. With 31 of the 500 biggest companies of the world in 2015, France ranks fourth in the Fortune Global 500, behind the USA, China and Japan. Several French corporations rank amongst the largest in their industries, such as AXA in insurance and Air France in air transportation. Luxury and consumer good are particularly relevant, with L'Oréal being the world's largest cosmetic company, while LVMH and PPR are the world's 2 largest luxury product companies. In energy and utilities, GDF Suez and EDF are amongst the largest energy companies in the world. Areva is a large nuclear energy company. Veolia Environment is the world's largest environmental services and water management company. Vinci, Sa, Bouygues and Eiffage are large construction companies. Michelin ranks in the top 3 tire manufacturers. JC Deco is the world's largest outdoor advertising corporation. BNP Paribas, Crédit Agricole and Société Générale rank amongst the largest in the world by assets. Carrefour is the world's 2nd largest retail group in terms of revenue. Total is the world's 4th largest private oil company. Danone is the world's 5th largest food company and the world's largest supplier of mineral water. Sanofi Aventis is the world's 5th largest pharmaceutical company. Publicis is the world's 3rd largest advertising company. PSA is the world's 6th and Europe's 2nd largest automaker. Accor is the leading European hotel group. Alstom is one of the world's leading conglomerates in rail transport. Rise and decline of dirigisme. France embarked on an ambitious and very successful program of modernization under state coordination. This program of dirigisme, mostly implemented by governments between 1944 and 1983, involved the state control of certain industries such as transportation, energy and telecommunications, as well as various incentives for private corporations to merge or engage in certain projects. The 1981 election of President François Mitterrand saw a short-lived increase in governmental control of the economy, nationalizing many industries and private banks. This form of increased dirigisme was criticized as early as 1982. By 1983, the government decided to renounce dirigisme and start an era of rigueur corporatization. As a result, the government largely retreated from economic intervention. Dirigisme has now essentially receded, though some of its traits remain. The French economy grew and changed under government direction and planning much more than in other European countries. Despite being a widely liberalized economy, the government continues to play a significant role in the economy. Government spending, at 56% of GDP in 2014, is the second highest in the European Union. Labor conditions and wages are highly regulated. The government continues to own shares in corporations in a range of sectors, including banking, energy production and distribution, automobiles, transportation, and telecommunications. These differ from countries such as the US or UK, where most of these companies have been privatized. Government finance. In April and May 2012, France held a presidential election in which the winner François Hollande had opposed austerity measures, promising to eliminate France's budget deficit by 2017. The new government stated that it aimed to cancel recently enacted tax cuts and exemptions for the wealthy, raising the top tax bracket rate to 75% on incomes over €1 million, restoring the retirement age to 60 with a full pension for those who have worked 42 years, restoring 60,000 jobs recently cut from public education, regulating rent increases, and building additional public housing for the poor. In June 2012, Holland's Socialist Party won an overall majority in the legislative elections, giving it the capability to amend the French constitution and allowing immediate enactment of the promised reforms. French government bond interest rates fell 30% to record lows, less than 50 basis points above German government bond rates. French government debt. The French government has run a budget deficit each year since the early 1970s. In mid-2012, French government debt levels reached €1,833 billion. This debt level was the equivalent of 91% of French GDP. Under European Union rules, member states are supposed to limit the debt to 60% of output, to be reducing the ratio structurally towards this ceiling, and run public deficits of no more than 3.0% of GDP. In late 2012, credit rating agencies warned that growing French government debt levels risked France's AAA credit rating, raising the possibility of a future credit downgrade and subsequent higher borrowing costs for the French government. In 2012, France was downgraded by ratings agencies Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch to the AA+ credit rating. In December 2014, France's credit rating was further downgraded by Fitch to the AA credit rating. Economic sectors. Industry. The leading industrial sectors in France are telecommunications, aerospace and defense, shipbuilding, pharmaceuticals, construction and civil engineering, chemicals, textiles, and automobile production. Research and development spending is also high in France at 2.26% of GDP, the fourth highest in the OECD. Energy. France is the world leading country in nuclear energy, home of global energy giants Areva, EDF and GDF Suez. Nuclear power now accounts for about 78% of the country's electricity production, up from only 8% in 1973, 24% in 1980, and 75% in 1990. Nuclear waste is stored on-site at reprocessing facilities. Due to its heavy investment in nuclear power, France is the smallest emitter of carbon dioxide among the 7 most industrialized countries in the world. In 2006, electricity generated in France amounted to 548.8 terawatt-hours, of which 428.7 terawatt-hours were produced by by nuclear power generation. 60.9 terawatt-hours were produced by hydroelectric power generation. 52.4 terawatt-hours were produced by fossil fuel power generation, 21.6 terawatt-hours by coal power, 20.9 terawatt-hours by natural gas power, 9.9 terawatt-hours by other fossil fuel generation. 6.9 terawatt-hours were produced by other types of power generation. The electricity produced by wind turbines increased from 0.596 terawatt-hours in 2004 to 0.963 terawatt-hours in 2005 and 2.15 terawatt-hours in 2006, but this still accounts only for 0.4% of the total production of electricity. In November 2004, EDF, the world's largest utility company and France's largest electricity provider, was floated with huge success on the French stock market. Notwithstanding, the French state still keeps 70% of the capital. Other electricity providers include Compagnie Nationale du Rhône and Endesa. Agriculture. France is the world's sixth largest agricultural producer and EU's leading agricultural power, accounting for about one-third of all agricultural land within the EU. Northern France is characterized by large wheat farms. Dairy products, pork, poultry, and apple production are concentrated in the western region. Beef production is located in central France, while the production of fruits, vegetables, and wine ranges from central to southern France. France is a large producer of many agricultural products and is currently expanding its forestry and fishery industries. The implementation of the Common Agricultural Policy and the Uruguay round of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade have resulted in reforms in the agricultural sector of the economy. Is the world's second largest agricultural exporter. France ranks just after the United States, the destination of 49% of its exports are other EU member states. France also provides agricultural exports to many poor African countries which face serious food shortage. Wheat, beef, pork, poultry, and dairy products are the principal exports. Exports from the United States face stiff competition from domestic production, other EU member states, and third world countries. In France, U.S. agricultural exports to France, totaling some $600 million annually, consist primarily of soybeans and soybean products, feeds and fodders, seafood and consumer products, especially snack foods and nuts. French exports to the United States so much more high-value products such as its cheese, processed products and its wine. The French agricultural sector receives almost €11 billion in EU subsidies. France's competitive advantage is mostly linked to the high quality and global renown of its produce, such as cheese and wine. Tourism. France is the most popular tourist destination with more than 83.7 million foreign tourists in 2014, ahead of Spain and the United States. This figure excludes people staying less than 24 hours in France, such as Northern Europeans crossing France on the way to Spain or Italy during the summer. France is home to cities of much cultural interest, beaches and seaside resorts, ski resorts, and rural regions that many enjoy for the beauty and tranquility. France also attracts many religious pilgrims to Lourdes, a town in the Hautes-Pyrénées département, which hosts several million visitors a year. According to figures from 2003, some popular tourist sites include Eiffel Tower, Louvre Museum, Palace of Versailles, Musée d'Orsay, Arc de Triomphe, Centre Pompidou, Mont Saint-Michel, Château de Chambord, Sainte-Chapelle, Château du Haut-Königsberg, Puy-de-Dôme, Musée Picasso, Carcassonne. Weapons industry. The French arms industry's main customer, for whom they mainly build warships, guns, nuclear weapons and equipment, is the French government. Record high defense expenditure, which was considerably increased under the government of Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin, goes largely to the French arms industries. France is also the fourth largest weapons exporter in the world. French manufacturers export great quantities of weaponry to the United Arab Emirates, Brazil, Greece, India, Pakistan, Taiwan, Singapore and many others. Transportation in France relies on one of the densest networks in the world, with 146 kilometers of road and 6.2 kilometers of rail lines per 100 square kilometers. It is built as a web with Paris at its center. The highly subsidized rail transport network makes up a relatively small portion of travel, most of which is done by car. However, the high-speed TGV trains make up a large proportion of long-distance travel, partially because intercity buses were prevented from operating until 2015. France also boasts a number of seaports and harbors, including Bayonne, Bordeaux, Boulogne-sur-Mer, Brest, Calais, Cherbourg, Octeville, Dunkirk, Fos-sur-Mer, Le Palais, Le Havre, Lorient, Marseille, Nantes, Nice, Paris, Port-la-Nouvelle, Port-Vendors, Roscoff, Rouen, Saint-Nazaire, Saint-Malo, Sète, Strasbourg and Toulon. There are approximately 478 airports in France, and by a 2005 estimate, there are 3 heliports. 288 of the airports have paved runways, with the remaining 199 being unpaved. The national carrier of France is Air France, a full-service global airline which flies to 20 domestic destinations and 150 international destinations in 83 countries across all 6 major continents. Labor market. According to a 2011 report by the American Bureau of Labor Statistics, France's GDP per capita at purchasing power parity is similar to that of the UK, with just over $35,000 per head. To explain why French per capita GDP is lower than that of the United States, the economist Paul Krugman stated that French workers are roughly as productive as US workers, but that the French have allegedly a lower workforce participation rate, and when they work fewer hours. According to Krugman, the difference is due to the French making different choices about retirement and leisure. Keynesian economists sought out different solutions to the unemployment issue in France, and the theories led to the introduction of the 35-hour workweek law in 1999. Between 2004 and 2008, the government attempted to combat unemployment with supply-side reforms, but was met with fierce resistance. The Contrat Nouvel Embauche and the Contrat Premier Embauche were of particular concern, and both were eventually repealed. The Sarkozy government used the Revenu de Solidarité Active to redress the allegedly negative effect of the revenu minimum insertion on the incentive to accept even jobs which are insufficient to earn a living. French employment rates for 15 to 64 years is one of the lowest of the OECD countries. In 2012, only 71% of the French population aged 15 to 64 years were in employment, compared to 74% in Japan, 77% in the UK, 73% in the US and 77% in Germany. This gap is due to the low employment rate for 15 to 24 years old, 38% in 2012, compared to 47% in the OECD. Neoliberal economists attribute the low employment rate, particularly evident among young people, to allegedly high minimum wages that would prevent low-productivity workers from easily entering the labor market. But Krugman states by contrast in his January 2011 op-ed that fewer French young people work, in part because of more generous college aid, while the overall employment rate is lower than in the US because of the comparatively early retirement age in France, i.e., the difference is partly volitional. A December 2012 New York Times article reported on an allegedly floating generation in France that formed part of the 14 million unemployed young Europeans documented by the Eurofound research agency. In the same article, Ansonet, a senior economist studying unemployment at the OECD, claimed that nearly 2 million young people in France had given up looking for employment at the time, while French Labour Minister Michel Sapin said that 82% of people were only on temporary contracts. Sapin further explained that, in his opinion, the challenge at the time was to create a more flexible system, in which greater trust existed between unions and companies, and partial unemployment was accommodated during difficult periods. The so-called floating generation was attributed to an allegedly dysfunctional system, an elitist educational tradition that does not integrate graduates into the workforce, a rigid labor market that is hard to enter for newcomers, and a tax system that makes it expensive for companies to hire full-time employees and both difficult and expensive to lay them off. In July 2013, the unemployment rate for France was 11%. In early April 2014, employers, federations and unions negotiated an agreement with technology and consultancy employers, as employees had been experiencing an extension of their work time through smartphone communication outside of official working hours. Under a new, legally binding labor agreement, around 250,000 employees will avoid handling work-related matters during the leisure time, and their employers will, in turn, refrain from engaging with staff during this time. Every day, about 80,000 French citizens are commuting to work in neighboring Luxembourg, making it the biggest cross-border workforce group in the whole of the European Union. They are attracted by much higher wages for the different job groups than in their own country, and the lack of skilled labor in the booming Luxembourgish economy. Regions economy. The economic disparity between French regions is not as high as that in other European countries such as the UK, Italy or Germany, and higher than in countries like Sweden or Denmark, or even Spain. However, Europe's wealthiest and second largest regional economy, Île-de-France, has long profited from the capital city's economic hegemony. The most important regions are Île-de-France, Rhône-Alpes, Provence-Alpes, Côte d'Azur, Nord-Pas-de-Calais and Pays de la Loire. Regions like Alsace, which has a rich past in industry and currently stands as a high-income service-specialized region, are very wealthy without ranking very high in absolute terms. The rural areas are mainly in Auvergne, Limousin, and Centre, and wine production accounts for a significant proportion of the economy, and Aquitaine, Burgundy, and Champagne produced in Champagne-Ardenne. List of French regions ranked by GDP total and per capita. Source: INSEE. Source: fx.com. Départements Economy and Cities. Departmental income inequalities. In terms of income, important inequalities can be observed among the French départements. According to the 2008 statistics of the INSEE, the Yvelines is the highest income département of the country, with an average income of €4,750 per month. Hauts-de-Seine comes second, Essonne third, Paris fourth, Seine-et-Marne 5th. Île-de-France is the wealthiest region in the country with an average income of €4,228 per month compared to €3,081 at the national level. Alsace comes second, Rhône-Alpes third, Picardy fourth, and Upper Normandy fifth. The poorest parts of France are the French overseas départements, French Guiana being the poorest département with an average household income of €1,826. In metropolitan France it is Creusot in the Limousin region, which comes bottom of the list with an average household income of €1,849 per month. Urban income inequalities. Huge inequalities can also be found among cities. In the Paris metropolitan area, significant differences exist between the higher standard of living of Paris West and lower standard of living in areas in the northern banlieues of Paris such as Saint-Denis. For cities of over 50,000 inhabitants, Neuilly-sur-Seine, a western suburb of Paris, is the wealthiest city in France with an average household income of €5,939 and 35% earning more than €8,000 per month. But within Paris, 4 arrondissements surpass wealthy Neuilly-sur-Seine in household income: the 6th, the 7th, the 8th and the 16th, the 8th arrondissement being the wealthiest district in France. Wealth overview. In 2010, the French had an estimated wealth of $14 trillion for a population of 63 million. In terms of aggregate wealth, the French are the wealthiest Europeans, accounting for more than a quarter of wealthiest European households. Globally, the French nation ranks fourth wealthiest. In 2010, wealth per French adult was a little higher than $290,000, down from a pre-crisis high of $300,000 in 2007. According to this ratio, French are the wealthiest in Europe. The tax on wealth is paid by 1.1 million of people in France. The payment of this tax starts when a €1.3 million of assets is reached. Almost every French household has at least $1,000 in assets. Proportionally, there are twice as many French with assets of over $10,000 and 4 times as many French with assets of over $100,000 than the world average. The French are also among the least indebted populations in the developed world, with personal debt accounting for little more than 10% of household assets. Millionaires. France has the second highest number of millionaires in Europe as of 2015. There were 1.8 million millionaire households living in France in 2015, behind the UK and Germany. The world's wealthiest woman and France's richest person is French L'Oréal cosmetic empire heiress Liliane Bettencourt. The wealthiest man France is the LVMH CEO Arnaud Bernard Arnault.